Good evening, Calvary kids, and welcome to week 3 of our Kids on Missions online. First of all, I hope everybody's had a great April Fool's Day. Kids, I hope you got all kinds of pranks pulled on your parents. Parents, hopefully now that you've been bunkered down with your kids for a week, maybe you got back at them for a little bit by doing a prank on them. But hopefully everybody is having a good April Fool's Day. And hopefully everybody is doing well, staying safe. And tonight, we are going to be finishing up a 4-week series on the continent of Africa. Now, remember, we've been talking about missionaries for the last 4 weeks. A missionary is somebody who goes somewhere and tells somebody about Jesus. And we've been talking about missionaries in a specific continent, the continent of Africa. Now, who could tell me what specific region of Africa have we been talking about the last 4 weeks? That's right, Western Africa. You'll see up here on the map, all these countries are a part of Western Africa. We've been talking about them. We've been learning a lot of cool, interesting facts about Western Africa. We talked about how, borders the Sahara Desert, so the average temperature there is somewhere between 88 to 106 degrees, so it's really hot there. We talked about how their malls, their marketplaces are a little bit different than ours. Remember, theirs are outside. They don't have a building. They don't have shelves. They don't have individual stores. Everything's just kind of on tables, and instead of games, instead of like toys, or clothing or stuff like that, it's usually more stuff that they need to survive, like food, medicine, that sort of thing. That's the kind of things you might find at a mall or a marketplace in Western Africa. Now, we've also been talking about missionaries who serve in Western Africa. Who could tell me, the first missionary we talked about was Kim. Who could tell me, what does Kim do in Western Africa? That's right. She tells kids all over Western Africa the stories found in the Bible. Because remember, a lot of kids in Western Africa do not have access to a Bible. They've never heard the stories, so she goes and tells them the stories of creation, Joshua and the Battle of Jericho, and of course, the story about Jesus Christ, his birth, his death, and his resurrection. Now, week 2, we talked about a girl named Isabel and her family. Who can tell me, what does Isabel and her family do in Western Africa? That's right. Isabel and her family do soccer camps. Remember, soccer is one of the most popular sports in Western Africa. So they go all around Western Africa holding soccer camps where they teach kids how to play soccer. But throughout the week, they also tell them the gospel of Jesus. They tell them the good news about Jesus, how much he loves them, how much he cares for them. Now, last week, we talked about kind of an interesting thing. For missionaries, they have to learn the language in all these Western African countries, and how it can be really hard and really difficult to learn a new language. Now remember, in Western Africa, there's a country named Nigeria. It's at the bottom there in purple. The country of Nigeria. Who could tell me how many languages do they speak in that country? Who remembers? "250 different languages just in Nigeria alone." That's a ton of languages. And some of the languages they speak are like English or French, but we learned a specific language last week called Songhi. All right? And in this language, we learned a couple of things. I want to see how much you guys remember. Who can remember, what does it mean when you say fofo? That's hello. All right? Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question, see if you or your parents remember the correct response. Fofo, Emma Pasteres, Montenegro. The question was, hello, my name is Pastor Harris. How are you? Let's see how many of you guys remember. You can post in the comments, what is the answer to that question? Hopefully it doesn't autocorrect on you. All right, but we learned we learned a few phrases in just one language, but there are so many different languages spoken throughout Western Africa. Now tonight, we're going to learn a little bit more about the culture of Western Africa. We're going to learn about the food that they eat in Western Africa. Now, who can tell me, what are some of you guys' favorite foods? Maybe it's pizza, ice cream, hamburgers, hot dogs, cake, cookies. Preferably my favorite is pizza. I love any kind of good pizza with a lot of cheese is a good meal for me. I love a good pizza. Now, in Western Africa, though, the food that they eat there is a little bit different. They don't have the big supermarkets like we've got Walmart or Publix or Kroger's that you can just go to and buy whatever kind of food you like. A lot of times they either have to grow their own food or buy it in the marketplace or make it themselves at home. Some of the more common food items that you'll find in Western Africa that they eat is rice. They do a lot of mashes. And then, and also a very popular thing for kids is porridge. All right, like Goldilocks, the Three Bears and Goldilocks. All right. Another big thing there is milk. These are some of the most common food items that you'll see. If you went to Western Africa and had a meal, you would probably get one of these three items, either rice, mashes, or porridge, and you might get some milk. Now, they do have meat in Western Africa, but meat is considered a very special thing. So if you were going to have like a steak or something or some form of meat for dinner in Western Africa, it would have to be a very special occasion. And when they do have meat for dinner, they pull out all the stops. They usually put a lot of spices on it. Some of the most popular spices there, saffron, cinnamon, nutmeg, and they make it a big deal. If you're going to have meat, it's going to be a very special meal that you are having. And also in Western African culture, mealtime is a very special time for them. To be able to get together as a family and eat a meal is a very special time for them. Now, for you guys at home, some of you may have a time where you guys sit around the kitchen table and have dinner together, or maybe it's, around the TV that you guys have dinner together. But for Western Africa, it's a very special time for the family to get together and to eat a meal together. So one of the things a lot of missionaries in Western Africa do is they invite people over for a special meal. They'll buy some meat and they will have a very special meal and invite people to come and eat with them. And during this time, they don't have TV or anything like that in most of these countries, so they're not watching TV or anything during mealtime. They are talking with them, and the missionaries are sharing the stories about Jesus. Because remember, a lot of them have never heard. A lot of them don't have access to a Bible. And so they are telling the people that come to dinner with them how much Jesus loves them, how much he cares about them. And in turn, they're hoping that these people will go out and tell other people. Another thing, once word gets out that a missionary is in a specific area, sometimes people will invite the missionary to come to their house. Because for some people in Western Africa, they may have heard a little bit about Jesus. They may have heard a little bit about what he did for them, but they don't have their own Bibles, so they can't just look up the stories on their own. So they'll invite missionaries over, and the same thing, they'll get out, meet, and make it a big deal, and the missionary will have the opportunity to tell the people about Jesus. Now, for missionaries in Western Africa, they're trying to tell as many people as they can how much Jesus loves them. But the truth is, there are over 367 million people just in Western Africa alone. That's a lot of people. 367 million people. And one missionary, they can't tell everybody about Jesus. That's a ton of people all spread out. But what they're hoping is this, that they tell one person, and that person will go and tell another person. That person will go and tell another person. It's kind of like this tennis ball I've got here. All right, so this tennis ball, out of this tennis ball, I'm trying to make a rubber band ball. All right, so I've spent the last couple days putting rubber bands around this tennis ball, and I'm making some good progress, but you can still see, if you look at this tennis ball, there's still a lot of yellow on it. You can still see that it's a tennis ball. There's still a lot more work to be done. Now, if we think of this tennis ball, maybe like the countries in West Africa, where the yellow are the people who have never heard about Jesus. What the missionaries are hoping for is this. They go out and tell one person about Jesus. And that covers up a little bit yellow. That covers a few people that I've never heard. And then that person goes out and tells somebody else about Jesus. And that covers up a little more. And then that person goes and tells another person. And that covers up a little more. And you can see a little bit of yellow disappearing. And the same thing, that person goes and tells another person. And then that person maybe that person tells two people. And all of a sudden, the yellow spots starts to shrink. And the goal is that we keep telling people about Jesus basically until everybody has heard about Jesus, till all these yellow spots are gone. Because here's the thing, guys. There are a bunch of people that have never heard about Jesus. And my challenge for you is this, and I've had you guys do this before, but think about one person you know, maybe that doesn't know Jesus, has never heard about Jesus, maybe who doesn't go to church, maybe it's somebody at school, maybe it's somebody on a sports team. Think of one person you know. And my encouragement to you is to tell them about Jesus Christ. Invite them to come here to church. When we're allowed back in here, invite them to come to church. We're going to be doing a lot of fun things, especially this summer. Invite them to come to things like VBS. Because here's what happens. You tell one friend, and let's say they get saved. Let's say they hear about Jesus, they choose to believe, and then they go and tell somebody else. And that person goes and tells somebody else. And that person goes and tells somebody else. And all of a sudden, because you just told one person, now a whole bunch of people have heard about Jesus. And again, this makes you guys missionaries because you're going somewhere and you're telling somebody about Jesus. So be thinking about this week. Who do you know that doesn't know Jesus? Who can you tell about Jesus and how much he loves them? Who can you invite to church when we're allowed to come back here? All right, now before we go, we're going to go over our memory verse here real quick. It's going to pop up over here. Psalm 66:16. You guys should definitely know this by now. So we're going to say it all together on three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Come and listen, all who fear God, and I will tell what he has done for me. Psalm 66:16. All right, now I know I've been telling you guys for weeks, when we come back here, if you can say this verse to me or to Miss Melissa, then you guys will get a treat. I promise that will remain true until we actually come back here. All right? So, real quick disclaimer though, if you live with Miss Melissa, that doesn't count. It has to be here at the church. All right? So, we're going to keep practicing this until we come back. Let's do it one more time. Everybody together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Come and listen, all who fear God, and I will tell what he has done for me. Psalm 66:16. All right, so you guys keep working on that. I know most of you probably haven't memorized. You're itching to come back and say it. We will be back, I promise, as soon as possible. Again, if you guys ever need anything, please contact me, contact Pastor Jeff here at the church. We want to help you guys. We're praying for you. Please stay safe. And until next week, I'll talk to you then.